Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our people unit for this month. We're coming to the end of July here. And, we're talking about an illustrator today. That's somebody who draws pictures to go along with news stories or something like that.
Or a book.
Or a book or whatever. So you got to go back way to the Victorian era to know about this guy called John Tenniel. Okay?
I can tell you the age or the dates of that. I looked it up earlier.
Okay.
1837 to 1901.
That's his lifespan?
No, that's the Victorian era.
Oh, Victorian era. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in any case, this particular person drew pictures for books, maybe for magazines as well. There was a big market for that back then because photography was not as common as it is nowadays.
It's definitely more rare, huh?
Right, but you still see it. There are people who like drawing.
You do. You like to draw.
It's fun to draw. It's definitely something good for your mind and your brain.
I'm terrible at it, so no.
People post their drawings online. My daughter is a pretty talented artist.
Oh, she posting her stuff?
Yeah, on her Instagram account. So,
good.
Of course, people comment all the time.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think there still are people out there who are aspiring illustrators. So maybe somebody you ought to look to for inspiration would be this British guy, John Tenniel. So let's get to it. Let's talk about John Tenniel here, illustrator of the Victorian era. Let's read through our lesson now one time. A young girl peers over the top of a giant mushroom to see a human-sized caterpillar smoking a tobacco pipe. The same girl attends a tea party with a rabbit, a mouse, and a hat maker. These are some famous illustrations from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, 1865, first illustrated by John Tenniel. Born in London in 1820, Tenniel first exhibited an oil painting at the Society of British Artists at 16. 4 years later, he lost vision in his right eye because of a fencing injury. Despite this obstacle, Tenniel still pursued an arts career. In 1842, he began studying at the Royal Academy of Arts, but he later withdrew and taught himself. In 1850, Tenniel became a political cartoonist at Punch magazine. He produced 2,165 cartoons over his 50-year career there. Tenniel's work reflected the social and political changes during this period in Britain, Europe, and the US. For example, he drew Britannia sympathizes with Colombia, 1865, to show the UK's grief for the US after the murder of U.S. President Abraham Lincoln. Besides his cartoons for Punch, Tenniel is remembered for his fanciful illustrations in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, 1871. Tenniel and Carroll had a strained relationship during the creative process, yet still produced two best-selling children's novels together. Queen Victoria granted Tenniel knighthood in 1893. He was the first illustrator to receive this honor. Tenniel drew cartoons for Punch until age 80 and died in 1914 at 93. He was one of the Victorian era's most published illustrators, and his work inspired many other artists. Okay, everybody, let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. It's our people unit, and the person that we are talking about is John Tenniel. Maybe you haven't heard of him. I must admit I have not heard of him, or at least I had not heard of him before our lesson. But I do now, and I am impressed by his work here. He was an illustrator of the Victorian era. So, of course, we did talk about the word illustrator. That's a noun. It talks about someone who illustrates something, which means they basically provide a picture of something when you have just text. Okay, so an illustrator, again, is a person who provides pictures for an article in a magazine or something. I suppose you could refer to a political cartoonist as an illustrator because, of course, political cartoons are still very popular. Even here in Taiwan, in newspapers, you see caricatures of political leaders and stuff like that. So those are also examples of illustrations.
Right. And the Victorian era was a period of time when we had a queen over in England whose name was Victoria, Queen Victoria. So if you see this Victorian era or Victorian style or fashion, it's just that period of time when she was the queen, and she lived quite a long life. So here's our descriptive paragraph here. We've got a young girl, and she's peering over the top of a giant mushroom to see a human-sized caterpillar smoking a tobacco pipe. Kind of a crazy scene. If you understand all these words, you know that it comes from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Kind of a crazy story, crazy book. I thought it was weird when I was a little girl.
You actually read it?
Yeah, and I still think it's kind of crazy. I'm not a real fan of Alice in Wonderland, but a lot of people are. If you peer, it's a verb meaning you're looking at something. Maybe you're looking and you can barely see over something. We used to have a neighbor, and when I lived in a house growing up, this neighbor would peer over the back of our fence to see what we were doing all the time, which was weird.
Sounds like a peeping Tom.
He was a weirdo, yeah. So to peer just means you're looking and you're kind of straining. Maybe what you're looking at is kind of high, or you're looking down at something that's low. So she's peering over the top of a giant mushroom. And there's a human-sized caterpillar. As you know, caterpillars are quite small. They're usually a couple of inches long. And this caterpillar is actually able to smoke a tobacco pipe.
Wow, I guess that's what they smoked back in those days. You don't see a lot of people smoking pipes nowadays. Most people, if they smoke cigarettes, or they do vaping. That's getting more popular these days. But, of course, back then, this is an illustration of a caterpillar smoking a pipe, or a tobacco pipe. And the same girl attends a tea party with a rabbit, a mouse, and a hat maker. Yes, those are characters in this book here. You got the rabbit there, who's in a hurry, I think, and then you've got the mouse, and there's also a person who makes hats, a hat maker, and these are some famous illustrations from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, which was published in 1865, and it was first illustrated by John Tenniel. So it was quite common for books published back then to come with illustrations. They would have pictures with them so you could kind of get an idea of what's going on in the story.
Yeah, especially for kids' books. Even today, a children's book will always have illustrations. It wouldn't just have words. Because little guys, little ones, they can't read. And so they're usually, there's a parent reading out loud to them, and they're looking at the pictures as mom or dad reads the story out loud. Wow, that was a long time ago, 1865.
But in any case, let's talk about the history of John Tenniel here. Born in London in 1820, Tenniel first exhibited an oil painting at the Society of British Artists at 16.
Wow.
At the age of 16.
Very young.
That was a long time ago, even before the American Civil War got going. And so, of course, if you do some art, if you paint something and then you show it to people, you exhibit that work of art at an exhibition, or you might exhibit it at a gallery or in an art museum. So he exhibited an oil painting at a particular exhibition put on by the Society of British Artists, and he was only 16 at the time.
Yeah, so if you're exhibiting something, it's a public display of a work of art or some item that you've made or interested in. It's usually, as Tom said, in an art gallery. It could be a museum, or maybe at a trade fair. Here in Taipei, we have lots of exhibitions. We have books exhibitions, furniture exhibitions, computer exhibitions. Those are all pretty popular. So he was pretty talented. At 16, he was already able to exhibit a painting he'd done at the Society of British Artists. So 4 years later, when he was 20, he lost vision in his right eye because of a fencing injury. Fencing is a type of sport where you dress up in these white uniforms and usually have a mask over your head to protect you from the fencing sword that's quite sharp at the end of it. If it was real, it could actually cut you. But when they were just doing it for sport, the tip would not be very sharp. But unfortunately, he lost vision in his right eye because of a fencing injury. So be careful, guys. Vision is the ability to see. So as you know, we have two eyes. He still could see out of his left eye. But you need both your eyes to really have that depth of perception that is really important. An injury is any time you've gotten some sort of type of wound or maybe a cut. Maybe you've been injured by falling down and you sprained your ankle. There are lots of types of injuries. This was because he was just fencing, probably with a friend or maybe even a teacher or a coach.
Yeah.
And somehow someone hit him in the wrong place, the eye.
Yeah, fencing can be a dangerous sport because you are using swords, even though you have the protection and there is something on the end of the sword to prevent you from getting stabbed. But you could still get hurt, and he suffered an eye injury. Wasn't there some kind of incident many years ago when Wang Jianming was running the bases or something, and he stepped on home plate in a weird way, and he suffered a foot injury and was unable to pitch after that?
Oh, it was very sad for all of us.
What a strange injury to have.
I know.
But in any case, though, so he was blind in one eye, but that did not stop him from pursuing his career in arts or in illustration, which we'll continue talking about in just a second. So let's take a little bit of a break right now. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, my name is Jenny. 今天我们要看的是第14单元，我们要介绍一位插画家 Illustrator。大家看小说或是看尤其是童话书，可能觉得图片其实跟文字一样的重要。那这边要介绍的这一位 John Tenniel， 他其实就是梦游仙境爱丽丝梦游仙境的那一位插画作者。好，我们来看一下这边就要先从他的画谈起。这幅画里面他说到有一个年轻的女孩，然后在一朵蘑菇上头看着一个跟人类一样大抽着烟斗的毛毛虫。好，这当然只是画里面所画的。好，提到这个画这里头的内容，大家大概就有一点印象了，因为没错，这里有女孩子，有兔子，有老鼠，还有一个 hat maker， 一个做帽子的工匠。他们这些人物呢，无非就是《爱丽丝梦游仙境》这个作品。那《爱丽丝梦游仙境》他这个作者，我们大概比较知道 Lewis Carroll， 但是插画家是谁，可能比较不清楚。而John Tenniel 他其实是很有名的，我们就要介绍这一位插画家。他当然年代是1820年，他在伦敦出生，而其实他16岁的时候就已经展出了他第一幅的油画。好，我们注意一下，当你说一个人出生在哪一年，当然这是被动的，所以你会用 born in London。不过这样子的过去分词为什么没有主词？主要也就是主词跟后面是重复的，所以当然后面你知道谈的是 Tenniel 这个人，他出生在什么时间？好，后面的主要句主词保留，这样就可以了。好，接下来下面就说到他是在16岁首次展出一幅画，年纪只要当你说一个人在几岁的时候，记得介系词是 at。We're
going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're talking about illustrator John Tenniel. He's a Brit. And he lived during the Victorian era. We were talking about his background, his life story. He was born back in 1820. He first exhibited an oil painting he'd done when he was only 16. But 4 years later, at the age of 20, he lost vision in his right eye while he was fencing. It was a fencing injury. But despite this obstacle, Tenniel still pursued an arts career, or you could say a career in arts. Now, if you have an obstacle in front of you, there's something that's stopping you from making progress. Could be, I don't know, maybe you need to get more skilled at something before you can actually be promoted at a job that you're doing. Or maybe you're a dancer and you still haven't been able to learn how to, I don't know, to jump beautifully in the air yet. Those are obstacles, but you have to keep working and trying hard and getting around the obstacles before quitting. Obstacles shouldn't let you just quit. They should make you stronger, and that's what they did for him. He still pursued or chased an arts career. A career is how you're going to make a living for the rest of your life. People do different things. People have different occupations. Maybe you're a teacher. Maybe you're a performer. Maybe you're wonderful at accounting. Maybe you're going to have a career in accounting. We're all a little bit different.
Indeed. So he did not let that stop him. Despite this obstacle, he pursued an arts career. Now, in 1842, he began studying at the Royal Academy of Arts, but he later withdrew and taught himself. So I guess this is a major university.
It still is.
I would imagine it would be in England there. But for some reason, he didn't like it there. He withdrew.
Or maybe he didn't have any more money to study.
Could be,
we don't
didn't
know.
have money, or maybe he had a conflict with a teacher or something, or he thought, boy, they're teaching me a bunch of stuff that I'm not going to use. It's a waste of time. So he taught himself, or we could say he was self-taught. A lot of people are that way, okay?
True.
They actually are able to teach themselves. I think, a lot of guitar players out there are self-taught. They didn't really take lessons at all. They just learned how to do it themselves. So here in the next paragraph, it says, in 1850, Tenniel became a political cartoonist at Punch magazine. Now, I mentioned this term before, political cartoonist. Okay, so he drew or illustrated cartoons in newspapers that were political in nature. And so if they're talking about being political, that means you're basically making comments on the government, on people running for office. Of course, political cartoons today would have drawings of Tsai Ing-wen and Donald Trump and stuff like that, doing silly things. Those would be political cartoons.
Yeah, this Punch magazine actually existed a long time, but its final issue was 1992, so it's no longer around. I remember seeing Punch magazine when I was in college. So he produced a lot of cartoons, 2,165. That's a lot of cartoons. He had a long career there, 50-year career. Notice here, guys, when we're talking about how long something is, we don't say 50 years career. It turns into an adjective, so you'll have the number like 10, hyphen year, a 10-year career. Or I have a 10-year-old son. You don't have a 10-years-old son. Be careful with that. I often see people write that incorrectly. So Tenniel's work reflected the social and political changes during this period in Britain, Europe, and the U.S. There are a lot of changes during this time. It was the Industrial Revolution. We were getting, everything was changing because people were coming off the farms and working in cities and factories. We finally were able to produce things in great quantities, but it was a tough life as well, right? Workers weren't protected. They often worked in really dirty factories, even children. So there were a lot of social and political changes during this time, not just in England, but in all of Europe and, of course, in the U.S.
So, of course, if you go to Google and you enter this guy's name, you can probably find lots of his illustrations, including a famous one. For example, he drew Britannia sympathizes with Colombia to show the UK's grief for the US after the murder of US President Abraham Lincoln. So he drew some kind of cartoon there that was showing England's concern, their sympathy or their grief for the U.S. because they just lost their president there, Abraham Lincoln. He was murdered while watching a show at the Ford Theater in Washington, D.C. just after the Civil War ended, okay?
Yeah, really.
And I guess John Wilkes Booth was the guy who did it, and he ran away, and they caught him in a barn somewhere, and then he was executed or something like that. So
notice here, guys, notice here that they spell sympathizes differently than we do in the U.S. There are a lot of British words that instead of using a Z, they'll use an S, and this is one of them, sympathizes. We would say it would be P-A-T-H-I-Z-E-S, but here it's the British spelling. So sometimes if you see an S and you think, well, that's weird, you should just probably know that it's British spelling. So they did have a lot of respect for the U.S. president there in England, for President Abraham Lincoln, who was the president that helped end slavery. He was important to us. Now, moving on to the next paragraph, it says, besides his cartoons for Punch magazine, Tenniel is remembered for his fanciful illustrations in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, which was also about Alice in Wonderland. Fanciful just means kind of crazy, kind of cute, kind of clever. If you've seen the characters in Alice in Wonderland, you know that they're kind of crazy. No caterpillar is the size of a human, and they don't smoke pipes, and giant mushrooms don't exist. There are a lot of crazy-looking people and characters, and it was Tenniel that actually came up with how they would look. So he probably talked to Carroll, who had written the story, and they decided how they wanted to proceed with these characters. So he's pretty famous for the first person to illustrate Alice's Adventures in Wonderland.
And we do use the word strained to talk about a relationship that is not going well between people.
They don't get along.
Right. Maybe a lot of people out there have a strained relationship with their parents or something. The parents maybe pushed them too hard when they were a kid.
Their in-laws.
Or their in-laws. Yeah, I have a strained relationship with my mother-in-law. I actually got along very well with my mother-in-law. But in this particular case, these two guys hated each other. They didn't get along. They hated to be in the same room with each other. They probably had to have other people convey them. Will you tell him that I don't like him making that noise?
Yeah.
It's really annoying.
I don't want to talk to him, but you tell him. Yeah, so the creative process isn't always peaceful and smooth. Some of the best minds that have worked together often didn't like each other. So that creative process, a process is just how something proceeds or how what actions or steps are taken in order to get to the end of that process and achieve a particular result. It happens quite often, I'm not surprised, because a lot of artists are very sensitive. You have to treat them right. So Queen Victoria granted Tenniel knighthood in 1893. If you do something really extraordinary or you've had a career that's had a lot of success, especially actors and writers and producers, you'll often be given a knighthood in England. We don't have that in America, but it's kind of a cool thing. They're then called Sir until they die.
Like
I know,
Sir Elton John.
Yeah, Sir Elton John, yeah. And I think he was knighted like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So this guy was the first illustrator to receive this honor. Kind of really cool for him. Tenniel drew cartoons for Punch until age 80. And died in 1914 at 93. Had a nice long career and a nice long life.
Too bad he died because he could have written up illustrations for World War I there. It was just starting then.
Yeah.
And he was one of the Victorian era's most published illustrators. So yeah, if you're interested in this kind of art, check it out. And of course, his work inspired many other artists up to the present day. If you're an illustrator, of course, you're going to know all about John Tenniel. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
好，我们继续来介绍这一位插画家 John Tenniel。John Tenniel， 我们说到，他其实很遗憾的是，他因为曾经在击剑过程里面，结果右眼受伤了，所以他 右眼是看不见的。尽管有这样子的问题，这样子的挫折，他还是勇敢的追求艺术的生涯。好，那他提到他后来到了皇家艺术学院念书，不过最后他并没有读完，他就 withdrew 当然是 withdraw 变来的。而 withdraw 这个动词，我们一般提到 withdraw 都好像是在讲领钱出来，或者是退后退缩。那这边讲的是他离开了这个地方，然后就自学。接下来这一段继续看，Tenniel 离开了学校，那他曾经呢成为一个政治的漫画家。而他的作品呢，也反映出来那段时间里头，英国啦、欧洲啦、美国啦，他们的这些社会政治的变化。不过这边要举一个，就是他画的插画作品。这个插画作品我们看一下 ，Britannia sympathizes with Colombia。那这个作品内容当然就是传达的是当时林肯总统被刺杀之后，英国为美国感到哀悼。好，那我们接下来看到，除了这个说他有很多的政治漫画之外，大家还认得他或知道他，可能还是跟这个作品，也就是《爱丽丝梦游仙境》，还有另外一个《爱丽丝镜中奇遇》这2本作品有关。好，这里面的作品呢，我们看得很开心，而且觉得很美。可是我们可能没有想到，其实在这个创作当中，他跟这个书的作者，也就是 Lewis Carroll 本身关系是非常紧张的，说他们有一个 had a strained relationship。 接下来我们来看最后这段，我们说明一下，其实我们知道 Tenniel 虽然说我们对他也许很多人都不清楚，不像对 Lewis Carroll 那么的清楚，但是要知道他在1893年是被授予爵位的，而且他也是第一位得到这种荣誉的一个插画家。而且呢，最重要的一点，他这一生的创作一直到80岁都还在创作。好，那所以说起来，他可以说是维多利亚时代出版作品量最多的插画家 ，most published illustrators。记得 publish 是发行出版，当然你说他是东西作品被出版的一个作家，所以用的是过去分词 published。 好，我们的讲解到这边，谢谢大家。
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you for joining us, and join us again next time, please. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
See ya.